Life in small-town South Texas is simpler, slower, quieter. Living here, there's a routine. Coffee at the same restaurant, in the same booth. The mayor might also be your dentist. The police chief, your neighbor. Everyone really does know everyone. Their past, their stories, their secrets. Be careful what you say and who you say it about. Awful things aren't supposed to happen here, but they do. Daughters don't come home, like Sylvia Selenas, stabbed to death alone in her small grocery store. Couples are targeted, like the Rodriguezes, murdered in their kitchen behind their Mexican restaurant. Hardworking fathers are ambushed and left for dead, like Royal Cumbi, pushed out of his own car by a stranger he picked up. Their cases are 3 of the 250,000 unsolved murders in this country. Every year, that number goes up by another 6,000. Victims whose killers go uncaught. These people come from all walks of life, from all over Texas. Their lives never intersected. They have one thing in common. Their murders are some of the oldest cold cases in their tiny Texas towns. So when a murder happened more than 30 years ago and the faces have long faded from the headlines, do their cases go unsolved forever? In 1983, about 5,500 people lived in Santa Fe, Texas, half of what it is today. Families didn't lock their doors because strangers didn't live here. They just passed through. Back then, there were no unsolved murders in this town. And then, one humid May day, late afternoon, Royal Cumbi got in his car to head home from work. He'd been in the office on a Sunday, catching up.
And it was on this country road where Royal stopped to give someone a ride. There was a struggle. Royal was murdered, and the killer took off. Now, 38 years later, can old evidence help solve the oldest cold case in Santa Fe?
Royal Cumbi Jr. was a high achiever, a successful Santa Fe oil man, married 25 years to a wife who adored him. They had 3 children, then a grandson.
An amazing man, a wonderful father, just never met a stranger and never made an enemy. I remember him as a workaholic. He not only was an engineer at Amoco Oil, he also did bookkeeping for small businesses.
The Cumbis lived on 10 acres in the country, land Roy bought so his kids could raise their own families next door one day.
Things were safe. We really didn't fear robberies and definitely not murders. You know, at the time we left our doors open. You know, you left your car open.
Roy started the first recycling center in Galveston, and every week with his 2 sons and daughter Carol, Roy drove a big truck picking up cans and bottles curbside. People depended on him.
You know, I think that was his small way of trying to save our planet. Plus, it instilled that into me and, you know, my brothers and I'm sure my friends as well.
The 46-year-old father loved all his children, but the bond between Roy and his only daughter was special. He was her biggest cheerleader, advice giver. The 2 were the adventurous ones in the family, loved a good thrill. Carol remembers their trip to Acapulco.
I wanted to parasail so bad. I was about 15 years old, and my mom was absolutely not. She was not going to have anything to do with that. And then the very last day we was there, my dad woke me up and we snuck down to the beach and he let me parasail.
On May 29, 1983, this happy life ended. Carol was 21 years old.
I remember what my mom was wearing. I remember the chair she was sitting in and, you know, I remember dropping to my knees when she told me.
Royal Cumbi Jr. was shot 5 times in the back while driving his wife's car. He was headed home from the office Sunday evening before Memorial Day. It happened here at the Avenue Q and 4.5 Street intersection.
He was coming from this direction. He was traveling east here.
Okay, and it was right here.
Right, probably somewhere right in here. He fell down to his knees, and then he stumbled over into this ditch over here.
There was one witness, a woman driving behind Roy, saw two men in the car with him. One in the back seat, the likely shooter, the other in the front passenger seat. The men drove off in Roy's '81 Chevy Monte Carlo. The woman followed them, but turned around and went back to help Roy. He died as paramedics arrived. Roy's Chevy found abandoned in Lamarck around 10 p.m., 3 hours after he was killed.
This happened at 7:20, early evening.
Yep, early evening.
What's your reaction to that? That's strange, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was still plenty of daylight out. It definitely, it is strange. You know, it kind of shows, you know, that there wasn't any regard to, you know, too much worries about getting caught if you're going to do something like that in broad daylight.
How was this area different in 1983?
Believe it or not, it's actually pretty similar.
46-year-old Royal Taylor Cumbi of Santa Fe to the...
We see that from this ABC 13 Crime Stoppers reenactment, put together by Santa Fe Police and Eyewitness News 1 year after the murder.
The witness saw Cumbi push open the driver's side door and watched him fall out of that vehicle. He fell to his knees, got up, staggered over to the ditch where he died.
There's just so many working pieces to it, and like I say, the challenge is trying to go back, you know, 1983, and pick it up from there where the investigators left off.
So that's what Detective Butch Peen has spent the last year doing.
This was the initial police report.
Rereading 3 binders full of evidence. In January, Peen resubmitted Roy's bloody pants and shirt to a crime lab. DNA technology has made huge strides since 1983. If Roy tried to fight off his killer, that person's DNA could be on Roy's clothes.
We're pretty confident that we can get this thing, we can get a resolution for this case. You know, we have a lot of stuff that's being processed for DNA.
Who would want him dead?
You know, everything, like I say, everything that I can see, he was a pretty straightforward guy. He didn't have any ties to any criminal activity, nothing like that. So you know, it's unfortunate, but you know, we don't really have a motive at this time.
I honestly feel like, and knowing my dad, that he was trying to help them. He was trying to get them a job. And maybe they wanted more. You know, I don't know. I've also thought my dad was the type, if he saw people hitchhiking, he'd give you a ride, you know. I can remember him telling people, get in the truck, get in the back, where are you heading? And would go out of his way to bring somebody where they needed to be.
Police have had plenty of suspects. Detective Peen says he's interviewed more than 100 people himself. But over the years, Carol has buried her feelings, tried to block out what happened.
They would have suspects, and, you know, one of them was someone I went to school with. So, you know, that was really hard. And then, of course, they questioned us as well, and that too was really hard.
We're looking live now from Sky 13. That's Lifelight on the scene.
And then, 11 days before the 35th anniversary of her father's murder,
there is an active shooter situation going on at the high school.
8 students and 2 teachers were shot and killed down the street inside Santa Fe High School. Carol's best friend's son among the dead. 13 others were injured.
You know, that was one thing with the shooting that I could relate to, is, you know, having someone just ripped from your life like that.
The day it happened, families gathered at the United Methodist Church. Carol went there too, to help anyone who needed it. And she's been coming here every week since that horrific day. Part of the church has become the Santa Fe Resiliency Center. Carol, its full-time director.
I felt, I don't want to call it a calling, I don't know if that's what it was, but it was something I felt like I needed to do. Being here, you know, has made a lot more connections for me to my dad. It kind of came to the surface a lot more, and I found myself talking about it more than ever.
She's learned to process her deep grief by connecting with those who are trying to do the same. Carol's focus isn't on finding her father's killer. She trusts the detectives will do that in time. Carol's focus is on healing. She's found the strength to talk about her dad again, remembering his smile, his drive, his love.
I mean, I know in my heart I'm a Christian, and I know that whoever this is, even if he's not found and doesn't serve any time, that, you know, his judgment day will come, and that's a comfort to me.
It's difficult. Looking through some of the evidence and stuff, it's like kind of like going back into a time machine.
Detective Peen says he thinks about Roy Cumbi every day, thinks about how a family's life was destroyed on this quiet road in 1983.
You've learned so much about this man who doesn't know you at all. Like, what is it like to be here and to be spending so much time on this?
It's a feeling like I've never had before. You know, we really want to, you know, get some closure on this case and get some justice for the victim and his family. So, you know, it's hard.
Hard, but he's hopeful that one of 2 unsolved cases in Santa Fe will get solved, and Carol will get answers she's longed for. Answers bring closure. That's all people on this street wanted in '89. Neighbors couldn't sleep at night after what happened to Sylvia Selenas. There's Sylvia, the beloved shopkeeper around the corner.
From fresh fish to greeting cards to batteries, you name it, Sylvia sold it here. She owned the place at only 30 years old. A big deal for a woman in the 80s, a minority at that. People shopped here because they loved her.
The girl with the bright smile and bouncy curls. Sylvia built her life here, and she would die here, murdered. It shook this neighborhood. 400 people on the island showed up to Sylvia's funeral, mourning and waiting for the killer to be caught. Weeks turned into years, nothing. 1989 Halloween Day. A crowd outside Selena's food store. Yellow police tape wrapped the building. We go past it. Inside, bloody footprints, the video eerily silent. Behind the cash register on the floor, Sylvia Selenas is dead, stabbed through the heart and lungs.
It's a very, very large knife.
This is crime scene video shot by detectives hours after her murder, never released until now. It tells the story of Sylvia's final moments. Her blood on the cash drawer, her body 30 feet behind the counter, her loaded pistol and machete untouched under the register.
There were about 4 bloody footprints.
Which makes Detective Michelle Sullenberger think the killer could have been a friend.
Yeah, there's no indication that she tried to defend herself or protect herself. And everything kind of points back to somebody that she knew, either a regular customer or a personal acquaintance.
Back here was the meat department.
Sylvia's brother has always thought that too. For 31 years, Derlis Selenas has avoided this place, avoided the pain it brings. He hasn't been back since the day Sylvia was killed. She was just 30 years old and had already owned the grocery store for 10 years. She was focused and driven.
And it breaks the heart.
Sylvia's murder was front page of the Galveston News back then. He didn't have to kill her, read the headline. No description of a possible suspect ever circulated because no one saw anyone enter or leave the grocery store that day. Derlis is sure whatever monster killed his sister had to have been someone she trusted.
She would not let anybody behind that counter. She would not let anyone unless she knew that person and felt comfortable with that person.
It appeared very personal.
Detectives say the killer stabbed Sylvia, then used the knife to pry open her register and stole what was in it. That triggered a silent alarm at 1:23 p.m. 911 dispatched officers who arrived 4 minutes later. By that time, the killer was gone. Over the next few months, investigators interviewed close to 200 men.
Nobody really stuck as a suspect.
All of them eventually eliminated. But maybe someone in this crowd knew something. Maybe the killer was right there under our noses all along.
How valuable is this video?
This video is the only evidence that we have left in this case.
The only thing they have left. Because in 2008, when Hurricane Ike ravaged Galveston Island, flooding and rain destroyed almost all of the evidence in Sylvia's case. A dozen of other cold cases, too. When we called Detective Sullenberger looking into Sylvia's story, Sullenberger didn't think there'd be anything in her file.
Yeah, I was super surprised to see that VHS tape still existed.
Not only did she find the tape, Sullenberger discovered fingerprints from the scene in '89 had been preserved. Now she plans to resubmit those prints to the crime lab. After decades of DNA advancements, these prints could bring a new lead. And that tape tracking down people who were there that day could bring new information.
Well, the family is actually always the driving force in these cases, so I'm hopeful.
The Selenas family
Over here was groceries.
is hopeful too. The gruesome memories are difficult to move past, but they won't focus on those. They focus on her smile, on her laugh.
She had one of the biggest hearts.
Christine Taylor never met her great-aunt Sylvia,
I hear lots of stories about her.
but she feels like she knows her. When Christine saw our series digging into unsolved murders, she called.
To be honest, I figured it was a sign from my Aunt Sylvia that maybe this time somebody was going to come forward if we got the help that we needed.
Because the thought of Sylvia being forgotten on this island makes Christine sad, angry, anxious. Most people who live around Avenue Q don't know what happened on that deadly Halloween day. They don't know about the savvy young woman, business owner ahead of her time with the kind heart and sharp wit.
She didn't deserve to die that way. Nobody does.
31 years ago, Sylvia Selenas unlocked the door to her grocery store, not knowing she would be dead hours later. It took Durlis decades to work up the strength to talk about that day. He doesn't dwell on it. He'd rather talk about the future, about his new hope for this case. What do you want done?
I'd like a witness to come forward, and I know there is out there.
He won't give up on the evidence, on Sullenberger, on good people who might know a secret and just need a little push to do the right thing. There's always someone who knows something. The question is, do they have the courage to come forward, or will they bury a bad secret forever?
When Antonio and Luz Rodriguez were tortured and murdered here in their Cleveland home, it had been the middle of the day. This house, everyone knew the Rodriguezes lived here. They'd been here for decades, since after World War II. The couple ran a restaurant in the back, raised 13 children here.
When those adult children begged people, please call police with any tips, no one did. The case faded from the headlines. Around the same year, police departments across the country were adding cold case units. Unsolved cases had piled up. Crime hadn't slowed down. In 2005, police were solving only 62% of murders, down 20% from 40 years earlier. And the Rodriguez's double homicide was one of the more than 5,000 new cases that went cold that year. April 14th, 2005. Panic inside a little white house.
911 Cleveland.
Yes, ma'am. Can I have an ambulance at 103 Waco, please?
What's the problem, ma'am?
Carol Tejada had just found her parents murdered.
My mom and dad, I just came in and they're all bruised up. My dad's thrown on the floor bleeding. Please hurry.
Do you know what happened?
No, ma'am. I just walked in.
80-year-old Antonio Rodriguez and his beloved 77-year-old wife, Luz, were beaten and strangled inside their Cleveland, Texas home.
Ma'am, I need you to calm down, okay? I know you're upset. I need you to calm down for me.
Tejada dropped the phone. She never finished that conversation.
Go ahead and get the other detectives. Get them all over here.
But the doors were closed, and I walked in.
15 years later,
and then I walked down this way.
Tejada and her sisters take me to that house.
and I noticed my dad's shoes were kind of sticking out.
Painful memories rush back when Tejada sees the hallway where her father's body had been.
I started screaming, "Dad, Dad, who did this to you?"
She says her mother was in the front room, tucked into bed, as if the killer cared.
What is it like for you guys to be in this house right now?
Very sad. It takes you right back to that day.
The motive is a mystery. The Rodriguezes weren't robbed. They didn't have anything to steal. Lived a modest life on a monthly Social Security check that hadn't even arrived by the time they were murdered. The couple didn't have enemies.
I mean, you couldn't ask for better parents.
Antonio was a proud World War II veteran. Luz devoted her life to raising their 13 children, who are adults now.
You know, our family needs closure.
Many of them still live in Cleveland, and to this day, their parents' double murder is the only double murder to happen here. The thing about Cleveland is, when a stranger comes to town, everyone knows it. So if an outsider murdered Antonio and Luz, wouldn't someone have seen them? The town is 5 square miles. Fewer than 8,000 people lived there in 2005. It's not easy to hide. And on the morning before the couple was murdered, Antonio was here buying a lottery ticket at the local gas station. He wasn't in a rush, had no idea what was coming. The people in this video would be the last to see Antonio alive.
Yeah, everybody here knew. That's why it's so sad.
There were leads. In fact, that very day, detectives thought they had a break when this call came in.
911 Cleveland, what's your emergency?
This is Troy Stevenson. I'm at Cleveland Square Apartments, and the description of the murder, whatever just happened, blue jeans, white t-shirt, white, short blonde hair. He's in C12 right now at Cleveland Square Apartments. Tenant just come and told me.
Police went to that complex with bloodhounds, leading officers to this apartment, but it was empty. And for the next 10 years, investigators worked to find the man who had been staying there. When they did, they also discovered he had an airtight alibi.
Somebody knows something.
Detective James Primo says they have the killer's DNA from a fingerprint found at the house. He won't say where exactly to protect the case.
For what it is and where it was found. If somebody is arrested tomorrow that matches that DNA profile or that fingerprint, they're going to know just like that.
The case haunts Primo because it's not just an unsolved story. The Rodriguezes were his friends. He says he won't retire until he finds their killer.
I have a bucket list of cases, and this one's at the top.
40 miles away from the little white house and the painful memories, there's peace, where the World War II veteran and his wife share a grave.
They were so giving.
Together in death, like in life.
Our family has gone through a lot, and we just want answers.
15 years of wondering, of searching, and it's taken a toll on the Rodriguez siblings.
It's hard. I have aged so much.
My mom would sleep here. We had the dining room table here.
Carol Tejada can't fight the tears or the anger. She's so tired of feeling this way. But she'll never stop talking about the day she found her parents strangled. If she stops talking, who will remember Antonio and Luz? Who will solve this case?
Because it seems like it completely turned into a cold case and nobody cares anymore.
The only double murder in Cleveland, Texas, still unsolved. Cold cases are in crisis. There are more than 18,000 law enforcement agencies across the country, and only 7% of them have investigators dedicated to working unsolved crimes. And numbers show that a person who violently kills will likely do it again.
When new unsolved murders get added to the stack, who will go back to solve the cases coldest of all? Who will investigate the Sylvia Selenases, the Royal Cumbis, the Rodriguezes?
If you know anything about what happened to any of them, it's not too late. Call police. I'm Courtney Fisher, and this has been Unsolved.